So welcome to our Aperture LinkedIn Live on the topic of decision friction, the hidden reason that strong selling decks don't convert. Firstly, a very quick introduction. I'm Andrew Scott, founder of Aperture, a behavioral science-based consultancy. We specialize in the retail path to purchase. I'm based in a really unusually hot London today, and with me is Rich.
Hello, Rich Butwinick, co-founder of Aperture. And Aperture really specializes in training and in skill building for the commercial marketing teams. And this is a topic that we are excited to share with you guys because we think it's going to be an unlock to improve performance with your key retailers. And I am in a balmy Minneapolis today.
Excellent. So really appreciate you all joining us. We've got about 30 minutes together. We'll stick around afterwards for any questions that you may have. So let's get into it. Let me first set the scene. You're a brand, say a range of cookies and baked goods. You're in front of a category buyer of a major retail partner. It's that critical biannual meeting where you present your brand plans and more specifically what you want to do in their stores to drive sales. But here's the thing. Is it possible that vendors and merchants can be in the same meeting, in the same room, see the same slides, yet come away with vastly different assessments of that same meeting?
I'll jump in. The answer is yes. And both can leave that meeting feeling, hey, I'm happy. But actually what we're finding is that in a majority of these meetings, the retailers don't see it as strong as you do. So from a brand's perspective, the team, the marketing team, the brand team, the sales team, you guys all worked on this for a long time. The deck was really strong. Everybody prepared. The thinking was solid. The data and the details were great. Everyone approved it. And in fact, it was delivered well in the room. The meeting even felt good.
Yeah, exactly. But you end up leaving without what you really wanted. So you get some of it, but not always. You get a partial win. And this happens frequently enough. You start to build it in and expect it. We chalk it up to things like negotiation. You build in this buffer. You start to ask for more than you expect to help compensate. I bet that sounds really horribly familiar.
Yeah, and this happens in our most consequential meetings. These are those line reviews or the resets, or it's your joint business planning meeting. Perhaps maybe in that innovation pipeline meeting, or let's just say you're trying to get into a new retailer and it's that new vendor meeting that you guys have worked hard to get into. These are the ones that are worth millions of dollars. Obviously, tons of time and efforts put into it, but you end up leaving sales and opportunity on the table. And so we wanted to find out why. So a couple of years ago, we started meeting with retailers on an effort to help some of our clients who were perplexed by this challenge because they've tried a bunch of different things. And so we decided to approach it a different route. So we said, all right, let's talk to the folks on the other end of the table. This is just one of the stats that we found that was pretty glaring, is that when we interviewed the buyers and merchants, we found that only 3 out of 10, 30% of the time that they felt that the presentation was quote unquote good, meaning that it helped them to improve their business and to make the decision easy. And so we want to find out, okay, so hold on, what's going wrong around here? This is correlated, but we didn't realize how significantly it was off.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of these decks or meetings, they don't fail outright. So in these critical meetings, as Rich said, they're monumental, right? There's millions of dollars of sales and reputation on the line. We've been there. We've seen it hundreds of times before. And the buyers in those rooms, they rarely give a flat no. What they do is they kind of stall and they say things like, well, I'll get back to you. I'll take it back to my team, or let me think about it. And what's interesting is for an industry that's advanced so much in terms of analytics and storytelling, this hesitation is just a huge breakdown. And it's important to know that it's not because the buyers are indecisive. They're not being coy and they're not trying to be hard to read. It's because of something we call decision friction.
Yeah, decision friction is what's behind that hesitation. And that's the hard thing. So decision friction is defined as when we make something that's hard for the retailer to do, or when something seems risky, or it's not aligned with their priorities. It may be an idea that could be good, but it isn't what they're looking for. This is rooted in behavioral science in terms of how we as human beings, version 1.0 of our brains, how we make choices. So when we're faced with something that's complex, a hard choice, something that's got a lot of elements to it, our brain's natural instinct is not to like, okay, let me really focus and bear down on this. No, it's the opposite, is to stop. It doesn't want to work that hard. And that's what the hesitation is. That's where we start getting into challenges, because our brains are sort of protecting our energies. So what happens is that friction is what causes the hesitation. And that's what's going to kind of stall your good ideas, product recommendations from going through. It isn't that the ideas are off, or that the products in your suggestions are wrong. It's this hesitation that's getting the impartial part of it. So, if you look at it, it's decision friction causes the hesitation because it doesn't make it easy for the retailer to make a decision. So the key thing is then the next is, well, okay, we want to learn how do retailers decide what to green light and what not?
Yeah, exactly. So we spent a lot of time, as Rich said, interviewing leading retail merchant decision makers across markets, across verticals, categories, to really understand how do they decide what to green light, but also how do they value certain vendors over others. And the problem is a fundamental misunderstanding of the human being that's sitting across the table in those critical meetings. What's actually going on in the buyer's mind during these pitches? Well, our research breaks this down into two factors: conscious and unconscious filters. Conscious filters are what a merchant will tell you they are evaluating. These will be typically product fit, incrementality to the category, level of marketing activation to support it, and so on. They want to know the fit with their current assortment and what kind of marketing support your brand is bringing. It's important to remember this is the checklist that they're explicitly hired to care about. But beneath that, there's this silent calculation that's going on, the unconscious filter. And this is the behavioral science layer that trips up so many of our brilliant teams. And we found that retailers aren't evaluating your presentation content the way you built it, but actually on how easy it is to decide if it's right for them. So unconsciously, these overburdened and busy buyers are filtering for very primal things: risk, effort, and ease. They're secretly asking themselves, is it safe for me? Is it easy for me to act on? Will this help me hit my goals and make me successful? And quite confidentially, will it put my own performance bonus at risk? So ultimately, is it easy to execute? And here the concept of cognitive load is really critical. So again, put yourself in the mind of a retail buyer for a large grocery chain. You are constantly balancing competing priorities, compressed timelines, hundreds of vendor proposals, asking you to rearrange your entire store, and often for their benefit. That's all risk and effort, and it's causing decision friction. So with the conscious and unconscious filters both hard at work, that's why many retailers are getting really frustrated by how vendors keep showing up at these critical meetings where the future growth of both organizations may be at risk if they don't go well. So in short, we simply make it too hard for them to say yes. And to see how this decision friction actually happens in a room, you just have to look at some case studies to see where things break down. And keep in mind, these aren't inherently bad presentations. They certainly look best in class, and they're probably something we're all too familiar with. Okay, so let's take a look at one. So this is a real successful brand retail presentation for a retailer in the US. However, we did change the name, the product, everything about it to protect the innocent. But we think this is a good demonstration of a few of the common
decision friction points that are kind of hidden, but they occur. So let's show you. All right, so we're going to show a few slides. There were 39 slides. They look great. They're very professional. And this is a line review meeting. And the business has been good between the two of them. That started with an executive summary, and where the brand team talked about the relationship between the retailer, how business is going, which is going pretty good, queuing up things that they are going to show in the next few slides. All really a nice, good start. They then went into some of the things that most brands put into their presentation, which is all good stuff about the category performance, how things are going, some of the key metrics that they had on it. However, this trips into one of the very first and common decision friction points, and that is they did not align it to the retailer, that buyer and that merchant's key needs and pain points. They're showing good category stuff, but not maybe the ones that are most relevant to that retailer. So imagine that buyer isn't just doing this meeting, they're meeting with all the competitors, and all the competitors have really similar information. And it's hard for them now they have to decide, okay, is this for me or not for me? All good information, but I'm looking for the things that are my key drivers for success. And when we don't align that, we miss the opportunity of getting them engaged and getting them to lean in, because they hear this is something that's meaningful to me, and you're actually maybe touching into a challenge that I have. Okay, so the presentation goes on, and they immediately get into their new product and some of the things that they want to bring to the table for this reset line review time. However, this is where we see another key friction point, is when we don't get a chance to establish what's really meaningful to that retailer, something that they will really resonate to, we then compound it by... So
Rich, you still there? We might have lost you for a moment.
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you. So we missed the opportunity to establish the second friction point, which is not showing a category growth opportunity. So when we do that, we lose the opportunity to come across as a strategic partner. We come across a little bit more as, hey, we're a brand first, maybe not category first. And when we do that, we lose a little bit of opportunity for collaboration. So the deck goes on, and it talks about the different things to do on the shelf, talks about a marketing opportunity to drive sell-through, all really good things. And embedded in those slides, they do, of course, say, hey, here are the products, here's a recommendation. And embedded in there is probably, hey, here's the incremental sales that would come out of it. All real common things, all good stuff. And then it goes to the end, and it goes to a thank you page. And this is another common decision friction point. And that is that we didn't ask what we wanted from them. We get to the very end of this, and there's no ask. There's no summation that says, okay, to hit your goals, to grow the category, here's our recommendation. Now here's what we need to do together to grow the business, to hit those marks. It just simply goes to a thank you page. And it's sort of implied in the ask, but there's nothing for them to react to. And when this happens, also what we hear is that this happens in maybe if it's a 60-minute meeting, it happens in the 59th minute. So there's no time for discussion, and it's sort of maybe just shuffled off into an email follow-up. It's just a big miss, and it happens all the time. So that's where you're seeing decision friction. That's what's causing the hesitation. And so good news is it's not that the ideas are bad or it doesn't look professional, or that the content per se is a bad recommendation. It's that the way that we're building this is creating these hidden barriers for our success. That's what's behind the hesitation.
So how does this happen? Well, the answer to that is actually rooted in an incomplete assumption of what constitutes a good presentation. The reason actually lies in how the selling story is constructed and reviewed well before you're in front of the buyer at that critical meeting. So what tends to happen is that teams create master decks and centers of excellence. They're all designed to create great presentations. They stack them full of more and more performance data, deeper insights, much prettier slides, and that's really good work. But it's not complete because none of it actually addresses or removes the decision friction. And the reason companies do this stems from an organizational flaw called diffuse ownership. I'll explain a little more. Most high-stakes selling decks are actually built by a committee. They're rarely built by one person sitting in a quiet room with a very clear vision. It's built and reviewed by a group. And in some cases, the presentation is constructed by a huge team of players. It could be across sales, account management, brand, trade, ops, research, the list goes on. Now, they're all really valid and required participants. But here's the underlying tension. Sales owns the meeting outcome, but they don't own the deck content. The inputs are shared between functions and are built across the organization. And when it comes to the final internal review before that buyer meeting, each function will approve the deck, but from their own point of view. So no one actually owns that it's built to get to a yes. So we show up in front of the buyer with a selling story that isn't always designed to get to a clear decision. The presentation becomes optimized to be comprehensive and right. But again, the focus is on internal alignment. It passes all the internal legal and marketing reviews, but it's fundamentally misaligned for getting an external yes. So we end up creating decks with decision friction built in. They're not aligned to the category growth priorities. They're too complex. They're not direct enough, and they're certainly not easy to follow. And ultimately, they rely very heavily on the retailer having to connect the dots. And that often has to happen after the meeting has ended.
Okay, so we've kind of established, hey, here's all the things that are happening kind of behind the scenes that's causing the friction, that's getting you to the incomplete yes. However, there is good news. We have a recommendation on how to fix this. This solution is going to work regardless of your category, your brand, your retailer, your language, or what country you're in, because it's rooted in behavioral science. It's rooted in how retail decision making gets done. And you don't have to be the category leader to employ this thinking. The key challenge is really in just two important steps. So the very first one, as Andrew mentioned, when you're thinking of putting this deck together, you surely want to be right on all the things that are important to the brand and the category. But when you're putting it together, think of it in terms of, look, how do we get to a yes? In other words, the job to be done isn't just to present our ideas and hopefully get through the meeting in good form, all important stuff. But the higher level is the presentation, is the meeting going to be optimized to make it easy for that retailer to say yes? That is the job of the presentation. So when we do that, then things are going to resonate better. It's going to simply make it easier for them to say yes. And so one of the questions you might want to ask yourself as this deck is coming together and you're reviewing it is ask, hey, what I know about the retail buyer for this and what's important to them, is this designed to get to a yes? Or does it have maybe some hidden friction that's going to keep us from getting that full approval? And those are the key things. We pointed out a few of those decision friction points, but there's actually a few more. And that's the second point of it, is that, you might be asking yourselves, well, okay, I saw a few of those decision friction underlying problems, but how do I really know what really to look for? And that's where our second part of the solution comes in, is that we have designed something we call the 5 steps to yes that will help you to evaluate and assess if there's any hidden friction that's going to cause your ideas not to land fully in the room.
Brilliant. And I'm going to walk through the steps quite briefly, but step 1 is really addressing the retailer truths and pain points. So is your narrative truly retailer focused, or are you still one of those laggards still being brand biased? The rule here is you do not start by talking about yourself. You need to ground the narrative immediately in the retailer's specific challenges. Show them you understand the water that they're swimming in.
Yeah. So as we saw in that example, this is your opportunity to build trust.
Yeah.
You also want to reflect that you have heard what's important to them as priorities for the category. But on top of that, okay, so what are the challenges they're gonna have that are gonna make it difficult to hit their goals? That's what you're trying to find into. And you want to know that, hey, what I'm going to share with you is something that's going to be important to you. So you're going to get their attention. And it's not about your product. It's about collectively growing.
Yeah, exactly. The next step is the grand benefit. And this is where you frame the opportunity in terms of category growth, not just your product's features. It's the promise of the value that you're going to unlock for them.
Yep, exactly. So your transition from that intro, that first step is something, again, from a category perspective. So you may say something like, hey, here's a strategy that we should be aiming for. Maybe it's something that says, okay, to help you recapture that Gen Z demographic and grow your aisle by 10%, we have a solution that's going to collectively get there.
Yeah, exactly. You transition from their pay point to a vision. And the next step is how we get there. Does your strategy really leverage the brand power for the category growth results that you're outlining?
Yeah, and so this is where you have a bulk of the work that you've already done. This is where you're going to show, here's the power of our brand and our marketing. The key thing here is curate it. What you don't want to do is going through those two steps and then show everything that you have. It's gonna look like a hot mess. You'll have all your products, all your bells and whistles, all your promotions. Be thoughtful. Which ones are most relevant to this particular retailer, to their growth challenge? And you're setting the roadmap, right? You're going to show how it connects the strategy to the outcome. That's the power of your brands and marketing.
Exactly. And here's where you say something like, we're going to achieve that 10% growth by putting our new highly targeted flavor profiles at eye level, running a specific digital promotion tailored to Gen Z in Q2. So you're very specific, and it removes this mystery of execution.
Yep.
Our fourth step is the reason to believe. Are your claims really validated enough to de-risk them saying yes? The reason to believe is the antidote to that unconscious filter that we talked about earlier. You've made a big promise. Now you have to provide a credible, evidence-based response that reduces their perceived risk of saying yes.
Yep, and that's a key thing. So you're aiming for that hidden barrier. This is too risky for me. In fact, what you almost want to aim to do is that it's maybe more risky not to act, more risky not to take advantage of your solution here. So again, one of the other key things is provide enough reason to believe, some key points that validates it, but you don't want to overwhelm them. Don't get swamped in a bunch of data. So you may find, let's just say it's a new idea, but you've tested it somewhere else. You may say something like, hey, we ran this similar, this promotional campaign at a regional grocer last year, and actually it did increase the foot traffic of the Gen Z. In fact, sales jumped 18%, something like that. And again, that's just an idea, but it's highly targeted proof, all designed to how do we make it easier for them to say yes. You're going to mitigate the risk, and and find that it's actually going to work for them.
Yeah, perfect. And that brings us to our final step, which is the all-important but so often neglected ask. You must define a clear and actionable decision that the buyer can approve right there in the room. No vague thank yous, in the room. Yep.
And I when we interview and survey retailers, this is the thing that they almost go 100%. I'll ask, is this something that you see? Oh, rarely. And I don't know why exactly maybe we're just uncomfortable of doing it. But this is where you say something like, okay, to achieve all we want to do, here's what we're asking you to authorize. Maybe it's these 4 products. Maybe it's 1,000 stores. and we want to aim for that April shelf reset. Something that's easy for them. That's a summation, but it also gives them something to clearly decide on. And if you doubt all the other things, it's not a matter of if, it's maybe more a matter of how. And so you're showing that it's safe, it's easy. You've made it easy for them. It's just really aligned with the behavioral science. And again, do not do this at the 59th minute of a 60-minute meeting. Give yourself some time to talk about it and to maybe let some collaboration happen. That's what's going to help you get to the full yes.
Exactly. So absolutely right. And aligning with the 5 steps to yes is the model to use when you're assessing your deck if you're truly retailer ready. But, knowing the 5 steps is one thing. Getting a huge cross-functional corporate team with a dozen different objectives to actually execute them without falling back into their old habits, well, that's another thing. And it's another challenge entirely. And honestly, it's quite often quite hard to objectively review your own work.
Yep.
And if you miss even one of these steps, friction starts to show up. And once it does, it's really hard to eradicate, particularly after the meeting. When the steps are aligned and clearly articulated, that yes is far more attainable. So the issue isn't that buyers are difficult. It's that we've made the decision difficult. We are making it simply too hard for them to say yes. And as I said, knowing the 5 steps is critical, but it's often hard to assess your own work, especially across teams.
Yeah. So we when we were rolling this out, the 5 steps, we discovered that. So we built a solution, and it's called Growth Story. And what Growth Story is an objective assessment against each of those 5 points. It shows you, here's what's working well, and here's what you might want to do to optimize it. It's an 8-page report, and we built it that you could turn it around in one day, because we know you don't have a ton of time to work on this. Let me briefly just show you what Growth Story is, just to give you a little bit of a background on it. So what we did was we built an agent that is specifically trained to do this. It's automated AI, and we built a rubric based on the meeting type, the obviously brand information, how much time you have, what your goals of the meetings, etc. And so we're able to run that through and provide a bespoke assessment of the presentation. All we need to do is upload the presentation. It reads any language, and it provides you guys with an assessment again against those key hidden 5 steps. Here's what's working well, and here's what you might want to do to optimize it, all in peer-to-peer common language suggestions. So it comes with coaching points, and it's even scores each of those 5 steps. So each of those 5 steps is scored on a 1 to 10 basis. So you get objective, non-subjective feedback. You get it within one day. And again, we know it's hard to do that internal alignment. That's why we built Growth Story. So it's super easy to use, and it's really designed to kind of fit within the mode and become that thread about how do we design this to make sure we don't have anything that's going to stop us. We sense this is going to be the unlock. And when we've worked with folks, this is the thinking is the unlock to getting them much stronger results out of their meetings.
Awesome. So we're at time. We appreciate we shared a lot in 30 minutes around this topic. Here's our ask of you now. Scan this QR code. It'll take you straight to our decision friction white paper. Here you can learn more about how to start to identify and overcome decision friction in your presentations. We'd also like you to drop your email into chat or directly message us. We'll get in touch to talk about this further and really get under the hood of how this can work for your organization.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, the good news is you don't have to overhaul your presentations, your decks, your ideas, and things like that. Really aligning to the yes, trying to avoid that decision friction, using those 5 steps is going to be the unlock you've been looking for. So we're happy to share more information on it, and we want to thank you guys for making time to be with us today.
Yep, brilliant.
We'll stick around if you guys have any questions or you want to throw something into the chat, let us know, and we will and we'll be here if need be.